Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of SimplyPodLogical, a Simply Nail-logical podcast.
Hello there.
Today's episode is brought to you by Holo Taco. Do you have boring nails?
It's not a problem anymore.
There we go. Holo Taco just celebrated its first birthday, as many of you are probably aware. Came out with a first anniversary collection of 3 colorful holographic flaky top coats. Thank you for all the support. That's selling very well. As of recording this, there are just a few of those collection boxes left, but by the time this goes up on Tuesday, that may no longer be the case. But
yeah, thank you guys so much for all of your support. I'm so excited and happy that everyone loved our first anniversary collection. I mean, I don't want to go all over this again, but to me, it just really was reminiscent of when we first launched, where all the excitement was about toppers and making any nail polish exciting, in my extra hollow mind. So just thank you guys. Ben's right. We're almost sold out of the collection box sets, which are limited edition. So if those are gone now, we may still have some of the individuals. So that's blue, purple, and gold Flakie Holo Taco that you can still get individually. But once those sell out, we are not remaking them. We are not restocking them. This is the first time we're actually making truly limited edition nail polishes that are not being restocked. In the past, we've restocked the polishes.
Sure. And we're going to get into the reasons why, because today's episode is about Holo Taco, is about the nail polish business, the nail polish brand.
This was such a highly requested episode by you guys.
Yeah, since we started the podcast, people have wanted us to do an episode on this, and we've wanted to. It just feels like now that it's been a year, now that we've learned a lot for the first 12 months of this business, I think now is a good time where we can sort of reflect back and talk about what we've learned and what that experience has been like. We've
learned a lot. We've had challenges, so we actually have something to say now.
I mean, we've had challenges, but we've also had a lot of success, right? So it's been a really positive experience, but it's been a huge learning opportunity too. So there are a lot of questions, so I figure we should just get right into them.
Yeah. Right, Menchie? Menchie's here. Menchie's our chief of staff.
All right, first question from T. Ho. When did you know you wanted to start your own brand, and how did you decide that you wanted your own brand and not a collaboration collection with a more mainstream brand?
That's a good question. I think I'll admit when I first started getting big on YouTube, I wasn't really envisioning having a nail polish brand. I was just kind of focused on, I just kind of want to make fun videos about nail polish, which I love and always have, but I slowly kind of morphed into more of a comedy kind of entertainment channel, and my focus wasn't on, I want my own brand. I think eventually when I realized that it was something that I could do and something that I was so passionate about, and I'd been approached by many companies over the years and had actually had my own collaborations with other smaller nail polish companies. I think the last one I did, it's been years ago. It was 2016. So once I got exposed to that I could actually maybe have my own nail polish brand and see how it might work, I became more interested in it. But it wasn't something I immediately, in 2015, thought would actually make sense for me.
I think it took a while for us to wrap around our heads around the idea of it being possible. Because I think I mentioned this before, in 2016, the first year we went to VidCon, someone we didn't really know all that well approached us and pitched the idea of you starting a nail polish brand. And we both thought that was kind of funny and weird, but that at least kind of prompted us to think hey, that is something I guess you could do. Yeah. I guess it just didn't really seem realistic. And yeah, we've intimated before, we had conversations all the way back from 2016, 2017, 2018 about the possibility of doing this. I don't think it ever really came close before things eventually came together for Holo Taco, but we had pretty serious conversations and listened to proposals from people who could have made it happen, and it could have been with more mainstream brands. I think out of respect to them, we don't want to really get into it much more than that.
And it could have been years ago. So a lot of people ask me why now Holo Taco? Why didn't this come out 3 years ago, after the height of Polish Mountain, for example? Yeah. And we had companies coming to us with proposals to make me a nail polish brand, basically. But there's just a lot of reasons why I didn't feel 100% confident in those business deals. And I think ultimately it comes down to wanting more control over what the product actually was, and me being the one kind of dictating that, rather than a company being like, you can have this pink or this pink, but that's it. Like, don't even try to add more holo, Cristine, because it'll cost too much. Like, I don't want to work with a company that isn't willing to make the products that I actually want.
Yeah, and we knew if we were really going to put your name and face on and in front of a brand, you have to have like complete creative control over it and really feel that sort of ownership and accountability.
And beyond creative control, actually, this speaks to T-Ho's second question about why not just a collaboration. So I do see value in collaborations. I see a lot of that in like the makeup industry too. And it makes sense sometimes for makeup influencers to do a collab with a very well-established makeup brand that already has all the processes and everything, and customer service and all of that's already in order. They already have confidence in their product, and that makes sense to me. For me, I had done, I think, 3 total. 3, maybe. Yeah.
You'd done a few collabs with
I'd done a
indie
couple
companies.
nail polish collaborations with very small indie nail polish companies, and they were great for me at the time. But I think ultimately I knew that I wasn't always able to have much say beyond the initial creative discussion. Like, I told them, what colors I wanted and kind of how I saw it presented. But after that, if they make batch number 2 or it's the following year, I'm not QAing, that's like quality assessing the products anymore. I don't go to that warehouse, right? It's not really my business anymore, other than the fact that I'd like licensed my name for them to use. So I think over time it was something I realized that wasn't right for me in the long run, and that I wanted control, not just like in the development, which generally you should have when you're collaborating, but also in the long-term goal of this brand. And then the other thing is with collaborations, it's usually a one-off deal, which is fine, and that makes sense for a lot of influencers or online people because they're busy. They're making online content, right?
Sure.
So they want one makeup palette or whatever it is. But for me, I had a much larger, longer term vision of holo tacos and layering and establishing many different formulas and coming up with an overall brand that fits together so well that was not possible to do on a collaboration level. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right, next question from SimplyPodLogical. How long had it been in development before you announced it?
Good question.
So when did we first?
I looked at my meeting minutes, which I take.
Yes.
And I think the first time, I want to say early 2018, maybe even 2017, we'd started having just the very beginning discussions. It doesn't mean like we're actually developing the nail polish yet, but we started having discussions with the company or the manufacturer we're with now, but also with other manufacturers as potentials to kind of like decide what made sense for us. And it took us, I would say, probably 6 to 8 months to finally make a decision on who we were going to work with.
Yeah. It was a lot of talking, a lot of discussions. Yeah.
And then after that, once we, signed contracts and we were like, okay, we're in business, let's start making the nail polish. I'd say it was almost a year until the time we actually launched. Because remember, we were going to launch earlier than July of 2019. And it just, so many things get delayed. You know how it is when you're first trying to launch things. It's just, yeah. So initially, I think it was supposed to be earlier 2019 was the plan, but it got delayed until mid-year. So I would say a year total before we were actually ready, from the time we like knew how we were making the nail polish and with who to when it actually launched.
Yeah. All right, the next question. What were the initial hurdles, fears you had while setting up a new business? I want to start one soon. I'm looking for some constructive advice on initial do's and don'ts and what to expect. P.S. Love you both.
Thanks.
This is a hard one, and one I think we want to be careful, because there's something about an influencer facing business that I wonder how useful some of our advice would be. Because there's some very unique things about having a business that has a popular internet figure as the face of it that you might not consider. Like, if you're a direct-to-consumer brand, you're selling things on the internet that just get shipped directly to people. there's a really good chance that a lot of what you're going to have to do early on is figure out how you're going to market your product to make sure people are even aware it exists. And most of these brands are spending a lot of money on advertising. With you and having the platform you've built over years on YouTube and other social platforms, we didn't really have to spend a bunch of money on advertising because you were just talking to the people who know you and know you love nail polish, and they believe you, and they tried and they bought the nail polish, right? So I think we should keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm. It's a challenge that we didn't have to face.
Yeah. In terms of what our fears were, though, I think it's fair to say, from what we've done on YouTube, we've always felt like we've had kind of complete control and oversight over, what videos you publish on the internet and what sort of opportunities you're willing to take in sponsorships. And it's just you and I making decisions about it, or me helping you make decisions about it, essentially. And with this, we realized if we were going to do this the right way, there's no way of starting a nail polish brand without bringing other people into the mix and having to trust other people. So I think early on, the biggest fear and hurdle and thing that we had to get over was you just, as a business owner, have to learn to trust other people to do their job and not micromanage everything. I guess I'm talking about a business that is a little bit bigger and that has employees. Like maybe you're just starting a business at home that's just you drop shipping things. I'm not sure what advice to give you there, but I think a lot of business owners, especially first-time business owners, have a lot of trouble letting go of responsibility, and a lot of owners of startups don't know how to let go of any of the responsibility. And I would say the most important thing you do is there are ways you can save money as a business. One of the ways you should not save money is through not hiring the best people. Like, it is worth investing in the best people so you know you have good quality talent and human capital at your company.
And that's really one of the only ways to grow as a company too, is to build your staff, right? You need to have good people who are all experts at their own individual things, because no one is an expert in everything. So maybe I'm an expert in, coming up with a mood board and designing and knowing what I want, to knowing the messaging of the next collection, but I'm not the expert in operations or how to fit this glitter through this machine and get it to go properly into the bottle. That is certainly not my field.
That's not your expertise.
No. So there are plenty of people who work for Holo Taco and, the team that helps support us, and they're all experts in their own right. So I think that that's really important for our business building, because it would have been absolutely impossible to bring you guys Holo Taco nail polish if it was just Ben and I.
Yeah, I think we maybe still have a problem micromanaging everything. I think people would be surprised how involved we are in the day-to-day, and the fact that every single thing that gets posted on social, you review.
Reviewed or changed by me. I usually edit the captions.
Right? So yeah, there's a lot of oversight there.
Even down to the sticker on the box. So on our shipping packages, right? There's a black box with a shipper, and then there's a sticker that's the Holo Taco logo. I remember having a conversation the sticker should be printed on silver holo with a black film over top to make it look inverted. And that's maybe not the best use of my time, but it's just something that I really cared about at the beginning. But I think what I've learned is to kind of let go of some of these smaller items that I know and have faith in the team to make some of these decisions.
Yeah, but there's also something to be said for, having that attention to detail is really important thing. There's a reason why, the brand identity of a company like Apple is so strong. And it's because Steve Jobs was an asshole who cared about everything. You know what I mean?
Are you saying
I'm not saying you want to be an asshole, but this idea of having a very strong notion and idea of how things need to be, even down to little details, does translate into how customers perceive a product. And I think it's reflected in how much you care about the little details. I think people pick up on that. Even
the little sayings on the back of the box. On the back of the unicorn box, it said something like, "No unicorns were harmed in the making of this box." And it's just in tiny scripture. And on the rainbow box, it says "not edible" somewhere in tiny letters. I wanted that there. Was it necessary? No. But
All right, next question from SimplyPodLogical.
It's your face.
Did you have any other names for the brand besides Holo Taco, or was that your choice from day one?
I think early on, I always knew it had something to do with Holo, and I remember like even trying to think of all the possibilities that I might want one day, like Holo Nation or House of Holo or Holo House or just like all these different plays on Holo.
The Holo House where all the TikTok kids live.
Right, yes. That's instead of Team 10, it's Team Holo. Could have been a good one.
Hype House? You're way behind on your references there.
I don't know. Anyways, I was just coming up with all these versions of like extensions of the word Holo and trying to think what would make sense and just cover all my bases. And Holo Taco always has been like the most unique, because no one else would say those two words in combination except me.
Yes, that's true.
And I liked that because it just meant that you would associate that with me and my brand automatically. I'm not borrowing from anyone else. Like, no one else knows what a Holo Taco is unless you like watch SimplyPodLogical or have heard of my nail polish.
Well, so yeah, it achieved something that we were really going for, in the sense that I think we realized we didn't want to just name it like SimplyPodLogical nail polish. We didn't want it to just be your name.
That's a good point.
We wanted it to be something that people who know you and are aware of you would clearly draw the connection to, but it isn't necessarily just slapping your name or your pre-existing identity on a bottle of nail polish.
It's not nail polish by SimplyPodLogical or perfume by SimplyPodLogical. You know, it's Holo Taco.
Simply by Simply.
No, simply by Simply. No.
And I think as we started just saying the phrase, the name Holo Taco, we just realized there's something catchy and memorable about it. Yeah. So by the time we engaged a design firm or a team here in Ottawa, Cinnamon Toast, an agency, to develop the branding. By the time we were talking to them, we already knew the name was Holo Taco. But the branding still could have gone in a lot of directions at that point.
Yeah, we didn't necessarily know like what font we were going to use or the logo yet.
Sure.
Yeah.
And if people are interested, I've actually talked to the lead designer that worked on the branding for Holo Taco, and I think they'd be willing to come on and talk about like what it's like to have a career in graphic design and what the process of developing the branding was like. So we might have a whole other conversation on the podcast down the road just on the branding. I
will just add that I didn't necessarily know that Holo Taco would be the name of my nail polish line until it was, but it was always a saying that we associated so much with me and my channel that we even trademarked it before we had the brand Holo Taco. So I think we filed for a trademark in like 2017, which is 2 years before we even had the brand. But I didn't necessarily know that would be the name of my nail polish company yet at the time.
So we have a few trademarks floating around out there, and it's not even necessarily that we're like super confident we were going to use them in every way we said we might. It's also just something where you want to protect yourself from another nail polish trying to co-opt terms that are clearly associated with you, right? Yeah. Next question. How did you feel in the moments leading up to the very first Holo Taco launch, and how does that compare to how you feel now when a collection launches?
The exact same excitement and not knowing, for sure how it's going to be received, because I'm just overwhelmingly unsure until
You're unsure of how it will be received at this point?
I mean, that's not completely true. I know that most of you will be happy, but there's still always an element of like, are they going to love it though? Like, are they going to love it as much as I love it?
Really love it.
Yeah.
I remember the first one being way more stressful than the last few have. Like, I mean, there have been challenges the last few months, shutting down the warehouse and launching Unicorn under not the best circumstances. The fact that we didn't have as much rainbow as we wanted because there were supply chain issues due to coronavirus. Like, there are other reasons we've been stressed out, but I think there was something uniquely, that first collection was probably the most rewarding, but also the most stressful for a lot of reasons.
And the most scary, because I didn't even reveal that it was nail polish until the day we launched. Do you remember that?
That's right,
I was just like Holo Taco, which you don't really know what that is, and then I was posting like random pictures that didn't necessarily indicate it was a nail polish, and then we had a countdown on the website, and no one knew what was coming.
Well, I think a few clever people figured out you could see
in the
in the
HTML code.
Yeah.
But for the most part, no one knew for sure what it was until the day of launch. So we were really overwhelmed with everyone's support. And I was a little bit worried at the beginning that people would maybe roll their eyes and think, oh, she's coming out with nail polish, like how predictable, and maybe not be that excited about it. But I was happy that people ultimately were, and they, saw how I really just loved the idea of putting a holo taco on everything. And that was just so true already to my Simply brand and like what I've been doing for years.
So yeah, we thought it was possible that the reaction would be as positive as it was, but you're never really sure how an influencer quote unquote brand will do until you launch it, right? So I know some people were upset that we weren't really prepared for the demand early on, and we understood that frustration. And the first 3 months of Holo Taco were incredibly stressful, just in trying to play catch up to demand, essentially.
Yeah.
Because we had invested a lot of money in preparing for that launch. Like, we put up all the startup capital ourselves. We put hundreds of thousands of dollars of our own money on the line to start Holo Taco. And to see it just immediately sell out was hugely rewarding, but also oh wow, we really underestimated how many people would want to buy. We thought we had enough to at least last the month, and it sold in an hour.
Yeah.
So that was a wake up call. And we'll get into some of the supply chain and more logistical reasons why you have to plan way ahead of things and you can't just immediately have more nail polish. But it was overwhelming and positive, but also immediately stressful again. Come on, we need to figure this out and grow into the company that people want it to be.
And because we sold out in less than an hour, that meant all orders were placed at the same time, which meant everyone was expecting theirs to ship immediately.
Yeah.
So that's something we grew over time and had more staff to manage that warehouse work.
That's right. There's probably twice as many people now working on Holo Taco than there was at the beginning.
Yeah.
All right, next question. How does the creative process work? Is it 100% Cristine coming up with collection ideas? Is there a creative team that helps? Or is it secretly Ben doing all the collections and shade names?
The truth is it's Ben behind it all.
It's not secretly Ben. It is 99% Cristine, though, I would say.
Yeah. So because this is my brand, I come up with the collection. And I've been very intimately involved in it to the point where I think of the aesthetic that I want, and I think let's take unicorn skins, for example. So I'll come up with a mood board, I'll come up with the color concept, and I'll already have some messaging in mind that I want to use. So the unicorn skins, 100% ethically sourced. I knew what kind of collection box vibe I wanted, with a little bit of flakies with an iridescent film on top. And I kind of have this in my head when I'm coming up with the mood board. After the mood board and the vibe and even some of the shade names, sometimes I kind of already have an idea of what I wanted, not Milky White. I knew I was going to call it that. And just the idea of calling everything unicorn skin with a different suffix or prefix rather, is I knew what I wanted to do. So after I come up with the mood board and what I want for the polishes, I send it to our nail polish expert designer. So she's basically what would you call it? She's a nail polish expert who a developer. Sure. She has years of experience in working with all sorts of different nail polish formulas. So she is the expert on it and knows what suspension bases work with what types of pigments, what ratios you need to use, what kind of holo works with this and doesn't, because sometimes things get cloudy. I don't know all these things because I am not a nail polish expert. I just know what kind of holo I want and how I want the finish or the opacity or the color to look, right? So I send what I want over to our nail polish expert, and she'll produce a couple different samples. She'll hand mix them using pigments and bases, and I'll give feedback and say, I like this one, but let's tweak that. Let's make it a little bit more opaque. Or how about if we shift the pink? I don't like it to be that bright. Let's take it down a notch. And we'll come up with different versions. And that's the prototyping process, which might go on for a couple months or might be really quick. Sometimes she sends me something and I'm like, it's literally perfect. Or just add one thing and that's it. And then there's other times where a formula that's very tricky takes a long time. And I think a good example of that is the linear holos. So that's our rainbow collection. I wanted that collection to be the second collection ever for Holo Taco. So it was supposed to be out I think like late summer is kind of what I was thinking of last year. But the formula just wasn't right on the first 2 tries. And we knew that it was going to take more time to develop because it's not an easy formula. And we also knew we had to
make way more of it than we thought we originally would have had to. So there was no way it was going to come out.
There was no way it was going to work. And if it's not perfect, I don't want to release it yet. So I thought, okay, let's put that on hold, keep working on it. And it ultimately did take us a year, like not a year, not every single day she was working on it,
sure.
But a year later, eventually we had exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the answer is, as much as possible, Holo Taco is your creative expression and coming out of your brain. But as soon as it's out of your brain, it's a more collaborative process with the developer. We have a really talented person who designs the collection boxes, which have become a very important identifier of the brand. So when we say it's 100% you, I don't want to discount all the other people involved in making it happen. But, to a large extent, it really is just coming out of your head and then us seeing how close we can get to that in reality.
Right, because sometimes not everything I want is possible.
Yeah, that's true.
So some people got to bring me back down to earth. But like I might have an idea for a collection box and maybe we can't get that exact finish or an effect. So we have a creative designer on our team that will help work with the box supplier to kind of figure out, okay, well, we could do this instead. Does this work? And like come up with an alternative concept that works. But I'm very much involved in everything. I guess that's the root of the question is like, is it me or are other people doing this for me? And I think overall it's very much me and what I want to see.
Mm-hmm. All right, next question. Do you release trending colors or just what you want?
Well, Holo's always on trend.
If you make it a trend, I guess. I mean, this is an interesting question because so far, Holo Taco has just been like whatever Cristine wants and what Cristine likes. And we haven't really paid attention to things like what is the trending color for the year or anything.
The Pantone color of the year.
Yeah, like I don't know if we really buy that stuff so much. I mean, there is something to it. There's a reason why other brands really pay attention to things like trending colors. I think this will be a really interesting aspect of the brand that we have to think about over the next few years, in that to what extent do we want the brand just to reflect what you like and your preferences, and at what point does it grow into a brand that we want to consider what broader trends are or what people want to see, even if it's not necessarily your first choice sort of thing. And I think there's been a few examples of just, certain formulations, certain specific things about like brush sizes and the shape of the bottle and things like those have all been because of your preference. And early on, we didn't really give much thought to like, well, what does like your average consumer want? All we cared about is like Cristine. So like Cristine likes a skinnier brush than you find in most bottles of nail polish. And so we just did that because this is your brand and it's your creative expression. So we just went with a skinny brush. But if more people want a thicker brush than a skinnier brush, is that a change we would make even though you prefer a skinnier one? Or is there a middle ground somewhere to be found there? Like those are the sort of questions I think we have to ask ourselves now that Holo Taco is growing into something bigger.
And we can only ask ourselves these questions after we release things that I like, because we need to get feedback and see a response, right? So another example is Not Milky White. So you guys know that I love doing nail art. I have done a lot of nail art, but I've always been frustrated, and I've voiced this many times over the years, with white polishes specifically from the drugstore that just make it so impossible to do nail art with because they take 4 coats to be opaque.
Very sure.
And how are you supposed to do stripes or gradients with a white that just like kind of gets muddy and just waters out? So that's why I wanted a true like really rich creme white, not milky white, because I had a deep need for it, and I felt that there was a population of people who had the similar feelings as me. What I realized later is that although there are some people who purchase Not Milky White and absolutely saw the value in it because they are nail artists or like want a gradient like I do, I think the average consumer of Holo Taco isn't necessarily as into nail art or isn't as like particular with their whites as I am. So I have learned over the last year to kind of, we need to take a step back, I think, like in developing future products, and also think, is this going to work for the average customer, and not just like me and what I think and my personal preferences. So this is all like just part of the learning process. And I think it's good because I wouldn't have known this unless I had made a white that, specifically that I wanted, for example.
I will just add quickly, like, yeah, your preferences for the opaque polishes, and they tend to be a little bit thicker. I think one thing we keep in mind too is that with nail polish thinner, and people who know nail polish are aware of this, you can always make a polish thinner than it is in a bottle, but you can't like thicken it deliberately after the fact, right? So,
which was part of my logic, and like, well, I'd rather give customers the thicker, better product, and then they can thin it out as much as they want. But I don't think everyone necessarily had that education or like background knowledge of thinner. And it's also, we don't sell nail polish thinner right now either. So it does make it a little bit more confusing. And maybe we're going to look into that too as something that Holo Taco could sell, just to make it more accessible for the customer base and more clear in our messaging, because not everyone is like a nail polish hoarder or expert like I am.
All right, next question. When you are testing the polishes on your fingers, what are you looking for, and how long do you test for?
This is a really good question. So I'm constantly always testing something or wearing the current collection, which is kind of like, I often don't have a chance to do that because I'm always testing other things. So that's kind of personally frustrating. So I look for lots of things. I look for, first of all, how does the color look? Obviously, how does it apply is really important. And opacity has been a really big thing to me, because in my experience, drugstore polishes always cheap out on ingredients. And that's why it takes 4 coats to, just get a basic red, or a black is another good example. Like, it shouldn't take multiple coats to get black on your nails. So how it applies, opacity, also how it lasts is really important. And I think there's a lot of factors that can affect this, which is why over the years I've also tried to explain to people, like, if you want your nails to last a long time, there's more things than just the nail polish itself that come into play, such as the nail prep. Which base coat are you using? Are you using a glossy taco, like a top coat? And are you wrapping the tips of your nails? And all these other things.
What are you doing with your hands?
What are you doing with your hands? Maybe you're biting your nails. Well, that's going to make your nail polish chip. But I still, knowing that our customer base, some of these variables are going to affect them, like washing their hands in water frequently, especially nowadays, right? I will test things as a normal person, or at least like try to. And I will have Ben and my sister also test them as well. So we have more people than just me
not
testing
just that.
the nail polish.
There are people now internal to Holo Taco who also test products. And often, like, if we're trying to release something new, there's like a round of testing they do to even screen things before they even make it to you. Right. So you're only seeing the better options to begin with. So yeah, at first I think there was a little bit too much reliance on your testing and how things performed on your nails. And now we've realized we need to test it on like a lot of people, different people with different nails and different, and like the oiliness of their nails. Like a lot of things, like you testing a long-lasting base coat is very different from someone testing a long-lasting base coat who doesn't paint their nails often.
Yeah.
Maybe. All right, next question. Have you ever thought of selling Holo Taco in physical stores rather than just e-commerce? And will you ever collaborate with other nail artists for collections?
I don't know. Can you imagine Holo Taco like in a store?
Well, I mean, it has crossed our mind. I will say that just from a financial perspective, it doesn't really make sense, especially in our current environment. There's a reason why direct-to-consumer e-commerce brands are doing well, and a lot of brands with physical storefronts are suffering right now, obviously, because they've had to be shut. And the world is just sort of shifting to e-commerce in general, right? So the only reason to be in stores, I think, these days is it does lend a bit of legitimacy to the brand. It does make more people aware of the brand in the sense that someone might walk into a store and see it there on a shelf for the first time, and that means something. But really, there's no real reason to do it, because like what happens is we would be selling it to these physical stores at a wholesale price. So we'd be making a lot less money on each bottle. and then they'd probably be making more of the profit from putting it on their shelves and trying to sell it that way. I wonder if this question is coming from the perspective of someone who lives somewhere where they maybe don't want to pay shipping costs. So I just want people to know, like, we're aware that shipping is a barrier to a lot of people, and the idea of paying a lot in shipping is just that deterrent to them actually placing an order.
Explain why nail polish maybe has such high shipping costs?
I mean, I'm not an expert in this, but like as a business, you try to negotiate better shipping rates. There's only certain ways that you can ship nail polish. There's certain countries to which we cannot ship nail polish at all. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration. Our shipping prices right now are probably higher than we want them to be, but we also, as of right now, cover people's like customs and those duties fees. So you shouldn't be paying any of those. We're sort of paying it
for international
for internationals. Yeah. So there's a lot of things to consider. And could we see one day people potentially being able to buy Holo Taco from maybe a third party where they don't have to face as many of these shipping barriers? Maybe it's something worth considering. We're also considering, is there a way of us bringing down shipping costs, especially if people place a significant order to a minimum order size or value? These are all things we're working on and trying to figure out how we can make that happen while still making sure we're not losing money on international orders. Because for a while we didn't want the shipping to Canada to be too much, and we still don't. But there was a while where like we were not making money on people in Canada buying the nail polish for a while. I'm not sure if you remember this.
One thing that I don't think people realize is that nail polish itself is more expensive to ship. The shipping couriers are charging us a certain premium for shipping it. So we are never charging extra for shipping than we are being charged by the shipping company.
Yeah, that's a good point. We're not trying to make money on the shipping.
No,
that's not
the
our
shipping
goal.
just actually is that expensive when it's going outside of the U.S. to another country.
Yeah. All right, next question. Have you hit any roadblocks with concepts or products that you are really passionate about? For example, there's a color you really love that you can see in your head and it just isn't possible for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things in my head that I wish I could just snap
that aren't
my
possible.
fingers. Yeah. So here's something interesting about the original launch collection last year. Eventually, it's black, blue, and the 3 holo toppers. But originally, I was planning on having multiple different creme colors, kind of these like neon cremes that is currently kind of in our gradient branding. So I think there was supposed to be like an aqua cyan and kind of a bright magenta purple, like neon creme color. And ultimately, they just weren't working out. I think one of them was maybe staining. The other one was just like sheer and not really applying as thick and as creamy as I wanted it to. And I ended up just saying, like, we're running out of time, first of all, with trying to get this together for launch. And I wasn't confident in them. So we ended up just scrapping it and just launching with the royalty blue, 1 coat black, and then the 3 holo toppers. So we kind of did a 180 from how I was initially envisioning the brand launch, which had a bit more color to it. And then it just became more about like the rainbows that would come from the holo tacos.
Yeah.
So sometimes these things happen and maybe you have to reformulate and it takes more time and you kind of have to shift your plans just based on the product feasibility.
And next question, how big is your team? Would you like to develop this further? And do you have any advice for other companies wanting to grow their team? I don't think we're going to give like a head count. There are many people involved. I think maybe just to give you a bit of an appreciation of, I think maybe we could just talk you through like who we sort of talk to, and then they generally have people they work with. So like there are 2 main project managers we talk to, and we'll meet with them weekly. And the main purpose there is just to make sure we're staying on schedule and, we're managing all timelines and expectations to make sure we're meeting the next launch. There's someone we talk to on the design side who designs the collection boxes and may make updates to the website and things like that. So we'll talk to that person quite a bit. There's someone on the warehouse side we talk to pretty frequently who updates us on how quickly orders are getting out, how many customer service tickets are coming in. we don't deal with them too often, but there's people who work specifically on supply chain, which is just all about getting in the new products and ingredients and negotiating rates with vendors. So there's customer service. Like, there's a lot of things. I'm sure I'm forgetting something
nail
important.
Polish developer.
The developer we've already talked about quite a bit, but like, so there are like these 5 or 6 different areas we engage with, and we might only talk to like 1 or 2 people there, and they might have some support staff, that we don't really talk to, but work. So I'm gonna give you a bit of an appreciation for like the scope of this. And again, I think I already sort of said this, but just to reiterate, there are ways of saving money as a business and like cutting some corners. You can't cut corners with people. You need to invest in good people if you want to be a successful company.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you imagine like me being the one sticking the labels on the bottom of the bottles? They'd all be stuck in the wrong places.
I could imagine that.
No, I don't think so.
All right. Next question from You Saw My Blinker Bitch. How much does Ben help you out with the business part? It seems like quite a bit. Lol. He is like your co-manager.
Ben is my life manager.
Like your carer.
Ben takes care of me.
I don't really know what to say about this question. Like this is your ship.
Yeah, but Ben, just to be fair, I think there's a lot of people out there, maybe there's this misconception that like you're just my boyfriend, so like what could you possibly do? You just occasionally show up in my YouTube videos. That is very far from the truth.
I think most people don't think that at this point.
But if someone does think that, like it's wrong. Like you are incredibly involved in the behind the scenes of my YouTube channel and the business and Holo Taco. Ben is at every single team meeting that we have for Holo Taco. It's not just me. I feel like we are very much a team, even though it's my creative vision and Ben isn't saying, oh, we should do gold instead of purple. But you absolutely have a ton of ideas on like supply chain management or like direction for marketing that we should do.
I try to lessen if there's way too much for you to do and be involved in, and I try to lessen the burden on you. Mm-hmm. And, if you're focused on the creativity and artistic side of things, of a collection and how you want to see it, the more I could take the burden of thinking about the more logistical aspects of things, the more I can take that burden off of you, I think the better.
Yeah, that helps. And then there's like small little things. For example, when I'm shooting for the next collection, which I do all myself, all the photography and videos that you guys see, like 95% of it was shot in my basement with my hands, with just me using the camera and posing in front of it. But you'll come down and help me. You'll clean up all the spills. Ben's literally down there with like a rag and acetone, helping assistant. Me clean up the spills, or holding an iPhone flash when I need like 2 iPhone flashes. And just like little things like that too that I don't think people like think about when it comes to the product branding, which is so important, is your photo assets, because that's what is demoing the product. And I don't even know if people have realized this whole time, like it's been just me with your help to produce all of that.
Well, no, we also have a photographer who can do things like bottle shots and just some assets that don't need your hands, but for the most part, it's you. All the spill shots are you. The swatches, it's your hand. There's certain things you can't get someone else to do for you if you want it to keep being you.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Next question. How did you find a distributor? I've never heard about the process before, and it seems like an interesting thing to find. We ended up working with someone that you had a pretty strong connection to through years of being a nail blogger online, and like we are aware of the different companies and labs out there, so it definitely helped that we already had a pre-existing business relationship with the current people who manufacture and distribute the nail polish. For a lot of startup brands, like the actual distribution side of thing, a lot of people might even just use a third-party fulfillment service. You see that pretty commonly. But I think we realize, we're shipping nail polish. There are rules about shipping nail polish. There's packaging things in the right way so it doesn't break. So we really wanted to work with someone who had experience shipping nail polish. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And not just shipping nail polish, but our manufacturer is also someone who I feel, and the reason why we went with them, they are an expert at making high quality nail polish. And as I mentioned, we had offers to go with like much larger labs that produce for bigger companies. And we ultimately decided that route wasn't for us, because even though they could meet the demand of how much nail polish we actually needed to make, they maybe either weren't willing or just didn't use the types of ingredients that I knew I wanted, like the higher quality holo, or using just more of that pigment in a bottle, so that because the cost is higher to them, and that's not something those larger companies want to entertain. Now, on the flip side, there's indie nail polish, which essentially I see it as like very high quality, similar to Holo Taco level, like of quality, because that's always been my goal. But they're at a much smaller scale and generally don't have large labs that they're working out of, right? So that just wasn't feasible for us in the quantities that we wanted to produce as well. And also certain standards and equipment, like we knew that they wouldn't be able to keep up with the level of business that we were going to do. So we ultimately found our manufacturer, which I think sits somewhere in the middle. So they're not an indie business. We're not an indie business. But we're also not like a giant lab that produces the same nail polish as Essie, or the amounts as Essie, for example, because I think if we were to go that direction, we would have been compromising on the quality of ingredients of what I wanted in the nail polish.
Yeah, so our priority was finding a partner on the logistical, on the operational side that could meet the demand we thought we might have, but was also willing and had the knowledge to develop the sort of higher quality polishes you aren't going to find in the drugstore. Yeah, so that's what was important to us.
And even still, after we saw launch, we still had to scale up quite a bit from where we originally started. But so it's taken some time to grow and scale, as with any business. When and I know it's frustrating sometimes for people to like not have been able to purchase because you sell out immediately. But we've learned a lot over the last year, and I think we've grown. Our team has absolutely grown. Many people have been added to the team. We've increased like warehouse space. A bunch of equipment has been invested in. So lots of things have changed in order to slowly over time be able to meet the demand.
Yeah, to grow into it.
Yeah.
Next question. Are you made aware of other brand launches that may come out around the same time, or does everyone keep to themselves? And if two brands release something similar at the same time, it's just a coincidence.
This is interesting. Like, is this a thing that happens?
Is this more common in the makeup community, maybe?
I've heard of this happening in makeup, where like major brands will negotiate release dates, or at least like suggest to each other so they don't overlap if they have competing audiences or products. Personally, this has never happened to me. I've never talked to a nail polish company and decided when we were going to release on different days. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not really familiar with this. I also don't think Holo Taco itself has any direct competitors that are of the same scale. So yes, there's indie polish who make, beautiful holo polishes too, but they kind of operate on their own scale system with their own audiences and customer bases. Whereas Holo Taco is a bit more widespread because of the reach of my YouTube channel. And I have a lot of customers who aren't necessarily nail polish like lovers. They're not necessarily totally into, they know all the indie brands. They just like, oh, that's a cool blue. And it's sparkly, right?
And on the flip side, we're not really competitors to
Essie.
like the big mainstream brands that are just trying to come up with pretty pastel colors of the season sort of thing.
Exactly, because what we sell at Holo Taco, you don't see in the drugstores. And that was kind of my whole point and why I wanted to start this brand, because I wanted to bring high quality special effects holo stuff to the masses that isn't available for the most part in the drugstores. Yeah. So we don't really have a competitor to even negotiate like release dates with. So I guess that's lucky, but it's not something I've really thought about.
Yeah, I've never thought of this before.
Yeah, our release dates are mostly dictated by when we can get everything ready and when it's perfect. Yeah.
All right, next one. How do you even begin to find holo flakes and dye? I guess it means like pigments or micas and stuff. Like, where do you buy these things? Is there a holo store?
I think they meant holo.
So we have people dedicated on the supply chain side of things. So a lot of the work that goes on behind the scenes that isn't glamorous is looking for vendors or distributors or manufacturers who produce the sort of pigments and hollow flakes and stuff that go into these polishes. I think a big difference between Holo Taco and the very mainstream brands is we are looking for some unusual ingredients you're not going to find in drugstore nail polish, but it can be very hard to find those rarer pigments in the kind of quantities that we need.
Right. And we learned that really early on with Flakie Holo Taco.
Yeah.
Which is one of our first polishes at launch. We bought everything we could, I think, from the initial supplier, and then we sold out, and then we went back to them, and there was none left. So there was none of the like tiny flakies left. And we tried multiple different suppliers after that, and they could only sell us such small amounts that it wouldn't have been even worth it to just restock that tiny amount.
Yeah.
So we had, I think, 6 or 7 months where we were out of stock of Flakie Holo Taco because we were looking for a supplier who we could have make it themselves and make enough for us. So that was a challenge because it's not a common ingredient that you see in drugstore brands. So if only indies are using this pigment, they're not buying the quantities that we need. So that's why like indies still might have similar, pigments in their polish, but we couldn't get enough of it to make as much as we needed. So we finally found a source. But yeah, it's tough, and that was a huge unexpected challenge that I didn't realize, and that it was extremely frustrating because the hollow flaky was so fundamental to my brand, and I think it made me realize that moving forward, we really have to think of these things in advance, and it is going to be partly what dictates what is limited edition.
Exactly.
So, for example, the Holo Taco First Anniversary collection has 3 different colors of hollow flakies. We know that these are not common, so that's why it's just a one-time big batch.
Exactly. And then, so we bought a lot of it because we know we might not be able to get it again, at least not exactly the same.
Right.
So if you make just one big batch of something and sell it out, there's no guarantee you'd ever even be able to find it exactly the same again. So that's why you can't even guarantee there would be a second batch in some cases.
So that's part of the reasoning why it's, okay, this is a limited edition collection. Yeah.
All right, next one. How long before a collection comes out is it finished? I noticed that Cristine wears the polishes as Easter eggs before releases.
I mean, do I wear them as Easter eggs, or do I wear them just because I'm testing and prototyping?
Testing them and then not doing a good enough job of hiding your hands.
Because it's on my hands. What am I supposed to do?
So I think, just people should know that it does take months from conceiving of a collection until it coming out. So, we already know, we have a roadmap in mind for what 2021 looks like. And we're starting to work on those collections already. And we still have, like a fall. How much do we want to divulge?
So all the nail polishes we're releasing for the rest of the year are already finalized and approved.
Yeah.
They're now just being produced.
Yes.
Even our holiday collection. It's literally July. And we're producing, we haven't started producing it, but we've finalized the pigments, and like those orders are being placed.
The prototypes are all done. You've approved them, and we saw the collection box for the holiday collection for the first time.
And it's approved now. So those boxes are going to start being made in July or maybe August, and they will be ready for the holiday collection. Yeah, and that's how far in advance. But that doesn't even count the original like prototyping and mood board for the holiday collection, for example. So I think I worked on that mood board, 5 months ago. So maybe 8 months, I'd say on average.
Maybe like 9 to 12 months out, you would need to at least start thinking about that collection is. In certain cases, we could be a little bit more nimble. Like we're not so big that we couldn't, if there was some like tiny thing we wanted to release because it was very timely and topical, I think we could try to make that happen. But if we know there's going to be a holiday collection at the end of the year, we know we want to do that every year, then we can start planning it out 9 months before and be thinking about it in like the early spring, right?
And like I know what I wanted for the holiday collection for this year. I've known for a while, since last year. So I made a mood board it's been prototyped and approved. But now we have to go onto the stage of like buying all the pigments. So.
And it also speaks to the fact that so the collection box is something that very much dictates how early we have to figure out the polishes, because you need to have the polishes figured out before you figure out the collection box. But the collection box needs to be ordered many months in advance of a launch, because we get the collection boxes made from a vendor that makes collection boxes for some other high-end, well-established brands. Yeah. So it's not like we can just call them up and be like, hey, tomorrow we need thousands of boxes. You know what I mean? So you need to put that product order in at a certain time, and it's going to take a while to make and take a while to ship, and you're not necessarily the first person in line either, right?
Yeah, this company that we use to make these fancy boxes makes fancy boxes for a lot of other like big brands. So a lot of work and money actually goes into making these collection boxes, and we don't charge anything extra for the box itself. Yes, some of that cost is absorbed in like just you purchasing all the polishes in the collection. But it is expensive, but I think it's become something that we really like doing, because as a customer, I think it's just so much more exciting when you buy a collection to have it all packaged nicely in this like really cool box with a different aesthetic. It's a mood, it's a vibe, it's a collection, it's like a whole album, you know what I mean?
No, I think it's become such a big part of the brand identity. People love the collection boxes, and it's kind of like you're on PR lists for makeup companies, and sometimes you'll get this makeup PR, and it's that kind of nice feeling of like opening up a gift that looks good. And
everyone can get it.
Yeah, but and
not
that's
just
the thing.
PR.
And no one was really doing that for nail polish, right? So like maybe some big brands send a few influencers these giant, elaborate like packages of here's our whole new collection. But the idea of having this consumer product for people that feels special, that feels like you're a special person receiving a PR package, I think it's been very effective.
Even the cartons. So not only do we have the collection box, but then we have the black, hollow, and silver cartons, like the little nail polish boxes.
Yeah.
Most drugstore, even indie brands, don't sell boxes. Like you just walk in, you buy just the bottle of nail polish, right? It's not common to have a box. There's only like a couple companies I can think of that even come with a box.
Yeah.
And I put so much thought into what our boxes would look like, and was very insistent that it be like that hollow kind of undertone with black, so that when you shine your camera phone flash on it, it becomes hollow and exciting. Like who thinks of that?
I don't know. I mean, obviously the product has to be the main priority. You need a quality nail polish is the main thing, but after that, the sort of luxe feel of the boxes and the cartons and how things are packaged and the brand, I think, is just so effective in the whole brand story or vision.
And I love keepsakes like that. And I think one criticism I see, and I understand, is just the idea that like, why is nail polish so expensive, or how come it's $13 American for a Flakie Holo Taco, for example. And I will say that our price points, I don't think are high compared to very similar products on the market out there. If you look at like the ingredients and what's actually in the bottle, it's very on par. But even controlling for that, we have things like the special cartons or collection boxes at no extra charge. And these kinds of, or the shipper boxes are even custom, like black with patterns, and just these small little details that you aren't necessarily getting from other companies that you buy nail polish of. Maybe they're $1 cheaper or $2 cheaper for the nail polish, but you're not getting all those other things along with that as well.
All right, next one. What is the profit margin you get on the
Speaking
polishes?
of prices.
You've mentioned before that you've been operating on losses because you wanted to get the best holo. Are you able to break even to take care of the entire Holo Taco team?
Who said losses?
I don't think we've ever... So I think we've said before that we don't have the sort of profit margins that you would see from makeup companies, certainly, or even from other mainstream nail polish companies that are probably spending less money on what actually goes into a bottle of nail polish. Our product costs are certainly higher than mainstream nail polish, I think is very safe to say. But I do want to be clear that we are a profitable... Holo Taco is profitable. When we started out, we've said we invested hundreds of thousands of dollars of our own money into it, we have made that back and more now. This has been a profitable venture for us. Mm-hmm. So I don't want people to misunderstand us saying the margins aren't amazing for it not being profitable.
Yeah, you could still have not the widest margins and it still be a profitable business.
Mostly because it has been quite successful at scale. So in a business, you have like fixed costs and variable costs, right? So no matter how much nail polish we sell in a given month, there are certain costs you have to pay for your warehouse, your employees. There's just certain costs you pay every month, no matter, even if you don't sell a bottle of nail polish. Mm-hmm. And that, that did hurt us when there was a time due to coronavirus where we had to shut things down, right? Yeah. So like that month would have been a loss, but there are these variable costs that are just about like how much you're putting in the polish and costs just associated with how much business you are doing. So the fact that Holo Taco does quite a bit of volume of sales means we actually, on a launch month, actually do quite well, both in terms of a revenue and profit perspective. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think the other reason why our profit margins, we've kind of said like they're not the best. We don't mean like they're not good. I mean, if we're comparing to other major drugstore brands who we might have even had discussions with and we have some knowledge about their profit margins, we know compared to them that they are making much more money per bottle than we are because of the choices of the ingredients and the cost of their ingredients that they put in. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to mention that. And I feel like there's a few other things aside from the packaging that I've already kind of explained that goes into Holo Taco that all cost money. There's custom things that I wonder if people even realize this, but the glass bottles that Holo Taco is in, that's a custom mold. Because when I was first presented with like 50 different options for like glass bottles, the people we're working with were like, here's a catalog of glass bottles. Which ones do you like? I looked through all of them and I didn't find one I loved, but I also didn't want to use a glass bottle that could or was already used by another company. So I said, is it possible to make our own glass bottle mold? And it was, but it would just cost money to make a mold. Yeah. So we did it. We paid the cost to make a special mold, and that way I could get as much glass on the bottom, which I really wanted to, like, it gives like a heavy weight to your hand. Mm-hmm. It makes the holo look better almost to have like a rounded, thick glass wall. Even up to the point of the bottleneck, I wanted it to be a certain width and size because I know that when I'm pulling the brush out of it, when I'm doing my like sexy shots, I wanted it to be that thicker neck with a different size because that's important to me from an aesthetic perspective. So that, even the cap itself. So the cap itself is a custom mold because on the top of it, it has our Holo Taco logo like molded into the plastic. Yeah. So we had that custom molded, and then we added like a matte top coat on top of it to make it that like matte rubberized texture grip because I specifically wanted it to make it easier to open the bottle. And I know like I'm really passionate and care about these tiny details, and sometimes I think it's easy to miss, but small little things like that have just made for more upfront costs that it's hard to really say exactly how much we like the profit margin is per bottle now because we had so many of these upfront like customization costs. Even the logo itself on the bottle is in holo. The Holo Taco, like that's not standard, and that costs way more than just printing it in black, right?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of things, and even if people aren't like conscious of them, and they might not be, I think they at least feel that when they're holding it, it is a high quality bottle.
I hope so. That's always been my wish, and it's just like everything from the bottle to the cap to like what's inside has been so definitely highly looked at by me, especially like in the beginning when we were perfecting it, and because I knew these would be our bottles for the rest of time. I don't want to say the rest of time. Who knows? We might change the bottle eventually, but for now, I knew that was going to be a long-term thing. So it's really important that it's good.
The bottle might be one area of, I'm not sure if I should say this. We didn't get to this question, but like, there's this question like, what do you think is the biggest mistake or misstep we've had as a brand? And I think a funny example is, so the bottle is great, high quality and everything. and it says on it that it has a certain amount of nail polish in it, right? And it should correspond to that custom mold we had made.
Yeah.
It's important that the label says how much nail polish is in it, in that it sort of guarantees that that is like the minimum amount of nail polish in it.
Right.
That's the most important thing. You can't be skimping on how much nail polish is in there if you say there's a certain amount. What we realized after ordering an incredibly large number of these bottles is that if you fill up the nail polish bottle as you should, it fits more than what it says on the bottle.
Right.
So this is one of those like sort of funny mistakes we've made as a business.
Yeah.
That like we're technically selling people more nail polish than it says they are getting on the bottle. And it's one of those things like we could change the label to be that higher number, but then some people would be like, this bottle looks exactly the same and you're saying I'm getting more.
How come mine has more all of a sudden when like it has been the same amount the whole time? We just under-labeled it.
So, and that doesn't sound like it's a big deal if it's just like a millimeter more or something, but, or milliliter, I mean, but if you extrapolate that to like many thousands of bottles, it does make a difference.
Yeah.
All right.
We learn.
We learn. Next question from Zarin. Hope you're able to provide more insight on limited editions. Is this due to special first birthday? Are there business considerations or supply chain issues with ingredients? Honestly curious as to what makes this decision to make it limited. Also, how many cat clocks do you have? How many cat clocks do you have?
Like 7 or 8?
7 or 8? Something like that. I think there's a Troom Troom video where you can see all of them in a row under a shelf. So we kind of got into this already with like some pigments are just so hard to find that we buy them once and we're not sure if we can ever get them again.
And this was the first time that
this
we're
anniversary
actually
collection
doing
was like that. I guess another thing I'll say is like when a box is limited edition, it's partly because a collector's box, we need to sort of predict 6 months in advance how many of them we need based off our projections. And if it sells out too quickly, it's not like we can be like, okay, put in another order so we can have more next week, you know?
In 6 months.
Like projecting the success of Holo Taco has been very difficult. And I think only now, after a year of it existing, do we feel like we're in a better place of knowing how many people might want to buy a collection box. So hopefully we won't have issues going forward with the boxes immediately selling out. I don't want to guarantee that won't happen. It still might if something is significantly more popular than our sort of baseline or what our sort of expectations are at this point. But, you know, if we're projecting out like how much we need to have, that's not a thing we can just change right away if all of a sudden we realize the demand is more or less at launch.
And I think this brings up like a broader question of not just influencers, but any brand really using limited edition or we sold out already and then we're magically restocking in 2 weeks as kind of a hype mechanism.
Yeah, we don't do that.
A way to get people to feel like they have to buy now, and it's used as a marketing tactic. So I absolutely understand that. And I understand why customers get so frustrated when you sell out immediately, especially if they think you're doing that on purpose just to cause more hype.
Yeah.
So I will say that any time that we've sold out, it has been the truth. We never sell out of something and I'm lying to you.
It's magically back in stock a week later.
No, I will say that whenever we sell out, we always pick like a number that's going to be the final number that we have able to sell, because we hold back a small amount for like if there's a customer service issue or someone needs a replacement or there was something in a missing order. Yeah. So that's why like maybe there's been a couple lingering rainbows that kind of came back. I think there was just a small amount. And
that could explain a small number of polishes being released.
Sometimes that happens because it's an inventory calculation. Yeah. So sometimes we're conservative and we want to make sure that we don't oversell something. Yeah.
Which has happened.
But then
accident.
You go to the warehouse and you do a recount and you realize, okay, there's actually a little bit of stock left.
Yeah.
So just as a caveat, that does happen sometimes. But I, as a consumer, really don't appreciate when brands use this whole limited edition or sold out as a marketing tactic, and then a week later they magically have like an infinite number in stock. Yeah. Generally, that's not possible to even do from like a manufacturing level for things like beauty and cosmetics.
Those are very likely fake sellouts, but for legitimate sellouts too, I'd also ask people to consider, like, even on like a collab thing, like maybe some influencer is working with a makeup company on a collection, there's a good chance that that company is taking all the risk and all the upfront investment in making a certain quantity of that lipstick that they think that, or that makeup that that influencer could sell, right? Mm-hmm. So it kind of makes sense that they're going to err on the side of caution, because they would way rather sell out of all of it way too quickly than have, you know, thousands and thousands of boxes of some makeup product with an influencer's face on it that they can't sell, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that might explain why these sellouts can legitimately happen too.
Mm-hmm. And it's, from a business perspective, it makes more sense for the company to kind of underestimate how many could sell in the event that they're wrong and then they have too many for that same reason. Like, sure, they would lose money, but also, especially with like nail polish and cosmetics, you can't have that product sitting around for months or years and then sell it then, because you want to have fresh product. Mm-hmm. So I think that's another thing to consider.
You'd rather have too little product than too much, but you're also losing on a lot of sales if you have way too little, right?
Right. So selling out immediately always sounds like a bragging right, but
it's probably not.
It's not, because you're also leaving a lot of potential sales on the table, and you're angering customers, which I don't want to do. And I know for the rainbow collection, we sold out in less than an hour, and we kind of knew going into it that we didn't have enough box sets. That was severely limited by the coronavirus, basically.
Yeah, we only had half as many of them as we wanted to, basically. Mm-hmm. And even if we had that number, that projection, even that wouldn't have been enough. So, yeah.
But that's the hard part about like predicting this, because we've only had five launches, like 5 major launches mm-hmm. in terms of collection boxes. And the first one, because we sold out in 40 minutes or something, we don't really get all the data when mm-hmm. you do that. So we know how many people bought in 40 minutes, but I have no idea how many people would have bought like over a reasonable 2-week period.
Yeah.
So as a result of that, like, we don't actually have good data until we have more launches mm-hmm. where product actually lasts longer. So we have increased our quantities with pretty much every single launch, unless it was limited by external mm-hmm. factors.
Yeah. All right, next one. With the ethics of consumerism that you two have previously discussed, how do you balance keeping things in stock with making sure products are sourced without conflict or exploitation? I love my entire collection and can't wait for more. Thanks. I don't think an hour into this we're going to get into a deep conversation about the ethics of consumerism, but I do at least want to acknowledge the fact that it matters to us that the products are cruelty-free and vegan. Mm-hmm. And there are ways for companies like us, or bigger companies than ours, have certain... there are processes by which when you're engaging with a vendor or a supplier or any third party, there are some steps you can take to have them sort of guarantee that they aren't using like child labor in any part of their supply chain. So there are some ways of trying to be an ethical company. Mm-hmm. Although, is it possible to be ethical in capitalism, in a capitalist society? I don't know.
Humanistic capitalism.
Humanistic capitalism. Okay. Next question. Are there any collections you'd bring back at a later date?
Interesting. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is there anything that you guys want?
So we'd be interested to hear people's opinions on this, because we don't want to be that company that says something was limited edition and then bring it back.
Yeah.
It wasn't actually limited edition, right? I don't appreciate that as a consumer.
Yeah, our intentions are never that. But at the same time, if you guys really want something.
At the same time, a lot of people missed an opportunity to maybe get that launch collection. Mm-hmm. Or maybe because Rainbow was constrained by a public health crisis, a global health crisis, you know, it's not like it would be impossible to produce that same box again at a later date with those same like, it could be possible. It would take months of planning, and we wouldn't want to do it in a way that alienates or pisses off the people who did buy it as a limited edition collection when it did first come out.
And I feel like that's really important too, is whenever we do a limited edition collection, I don't want to lie to you guys, say that, and then bring it back 2 months later, because you upset the people who feel like they were duped into buying it because they thought they were going to be an exclusive getting it.
No one's being duped into buying it.
No, but that's part of, like, as a consumer, you feel like it's limited. You don't want someone to be able to buy it 3 months later. That's not fair to you. That's part of what you're purchasing, I feel, as a consumer.
I guess. I wonder if people would be that angry, or if there's just a very small number of people who would look at it that way. It's something we'd be interested to hear people talk about.
Yeah.
And partly, too, is just we're always so focused on, like, and excited about the next few collections. Right. It is a little weird to look back and put a lot of planning and logistics into bringing back something that already happened. But I could see a scenario in which we bring a very highly requested one out of the vault, so to speak.
Like a box back, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think just for the rainbow collection, because I know a lot of the comments are about that, we are restocking the polishes. We're just waiting on the new pigments to come in. And I think towards the end of the summer is what we're thinking in terms of like a full restock of all
we're
seven,
aiming for,
seven colors. Yeah, but
I
always get that question, so figured I'd answer it.
All right, last question. What is the most fulfilling part of having a nail polish brand?
Painting my own nails with Holo Taco.
With your own nail polish.
No. Honestly, for me, this is going to sound so sappy, sock sap, but it is true, is when you guys buy it and you get it in the mail and then you use it and you show me your combinations or your nail art, or just like you're so excited and you're Snapchatting, screaming at it or something, and then you share it with me on Twitter. That just gets me so excited because I know that you're sharing the same excitement that I am about it. And it seems so silly. Like it's nail polish at the end of the day, right? Like you just paint it on your nails. But there's something personally for me that brings me so much joy out of it, to just like layer on my own combination or make something cooler. I'm bored. I'm just going to like stare at my nails for a couple minutes. Or someone asks me like, oh, what's that on your nails? I'm always so excited to tell them. Like even before Holo Taco, I was just like, oh, so I'd put this over top of this to get this. And I feel like my own excitement for that has rubbed off on people, and it makes me so happy to see other people get just as excited about it. So it's definitely the most rewarding when I see you guys share your excitement for the collections, especially when you do nail art. Like some of the nail art that came out of the rainbow collection has been amazing. Like I'm fired. Okay, like you guys are hired. It's so cool. It's inspiring. It's something to do. It's fun. It's creative. And I just really love seeing other people enjoy it.
It's one thing to, for an idea to start in your head, to then actually see it being made in real life. Maybe it's only when you actually start seeing other people enjoying it and getting it, does it really hit you that like,
it's real.
How crazy that is.
Yeah, because you're right. I kind of designed this based on what I like, right? That's how this started. And I'm learning and we're changing and evolving, of course. But seeing other people enjoy it and come up with their own ideas of, maybe putting a unicorn skin on a bear nail or something to make opal nails. Like, I didn't think of that. And people are showing me different ways of using my own products. And it's just so cool that you can be equally as creative, and you don't have to be the creative director of Holo Taco. Just like take my products and come up with your own combo. And I just think that's so fun.
And yeah, that original vision of all the layering possibilities, I think just now there are enough kind of different finishes and stuff out from Holo Taco that we are starting to see some unique combinations of people using products in certain combinations that we maybe wouldn't have predicted because there are enough of them to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know. I feel like in the rest of this year, there's a couple more formulas that need to come out that are coming out.
Okay.
That will.
You can't, don't give it away.
I'm not going to. Yeah. But like, there's so many other fundamentals that I'm like, no. We need this. We need this under Holo Taco to like really make sure my vision is fully seen.
All right. And if you think there's something Holo Taco needs to have, the comment section on this video would be a good opportunity for you guys to float out some ideas of things you would like to see from the brand too. I
know. I'll just say, like, you guys are constantly telling me what we should do. Like, I see it on Twitter. They're like, you should do Menchine Xyler or nail oil or whatever. And
yeah, we know.
90% of what you suggest, we're probably already doing. But these things take time. So they might roll out this year, they might be next year, or they might be like on our to-do list.
Yeah.
So it's all very exciting. This is a fun podcast.
Was
I feel like just an hour long talking about nail polish.
Hey, if there's something about the business side of things that we didn't cover, let us know too, because we could always talk about this again, because this has just become a big part of our daily lives. So I don't think we would mind having more content.
We didn't even really talk about that. How much of our day is given to Holo Taco business related stuff. Yeah,
that's right.
A lot of it.
Yeah, there's your answer. All right. Apologies to Gus Johnson. We were going to have him on today to talk about his love of nail polish too, but
really,
but he ran out. We ran out of time.
Can we add him to the PR list?
Maybe. But yeah, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for swatching.
I love that.
We'll see you next Taco Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's taco about it. Let's taco about Holo Taco.
Okay. Thank you everybody for tuning in.
Thanks so much.
Hope that was
watching.
interesting. We'll see y'all later.
See y'all later. Bye.